Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be looking at our argument passage number 4. Here it is. Entomophagi, a sustainable solution. As always, we're going to be going through all 11 of these questions, the entire passage, so that you get an idea of how to approach these writing argument passages and are ready to ace the SAT writing section. If you like these videos or find them informative, please be sure to like and subscribe. And with that, let's get started on our first question. We're going to start from the beginning. And traditional livestock rearing practices place heavy burdens on Earth's limited natural resources. Animal waste contaminates water sources, creates acidic environments, and polluting the air with greenhouse gases. Well, here we have contaminates, and then we have creates. So since we have a parallel structure here, we need to have something that ends in et or pollutes. So our answer is going to be pollutes. That keeps the parallel structure the same tenses for each of those. If you don't know what parallel structure is, be sure to check out that video in season 0, where we go over all of the skills necessary for the writing and language section. But for now, let's move on to the next question. Yet the world's livestock requirement is expected to double by the year 2050. And then we have 2. Some of the scientists and environmental advocates have such an alternative in mind. Okay, so they have such an alternative. Well, if you're saying such an alternative, that implies that you've already discussed the possibility of an alternative somewhere else. Keep that in mind. And we have 465 million tons of livestock products to be required to meet the demands of 9 billion people. That doesn't talk about anything about the bugs. And then the next one's heavy strains on food sources like fish. Again, not about the bug. Traditional livestock may become an untenable protein source because of the heavy burdens placed on Earth's resources. That does seem to work, except it still doesn't talk about bugs. Right? It talks about the problems, but doesn't talk about the bugs. That's our transition. It will be environmentally impossible to meet such a great demand without turning to an alternative sources of protein. It says the word alternative. It says other ways to get around doing this. And this says such an alternative, which is the bugs. So that is our answer. And we can move on. Question 3. It's down here. By embracing entomophagy, the consumption of insects as food, the nutritional needs of people can continue to be met while also significantly reducing the ecological pressures resulting from traditional livestock rearing practices. That's a mouthful. So let's see what we can do here. Here we have by embracing entomophagy, and we can get rid of this part for right now because this is a non-essential part. So the sentence still works even if we take it out. We have by embracing entomophagy, the nutritional needs of people. Well, who is doing the embracing entomophagy or embracing that idea, right? The people are doing that. So the people have to be the first word right here because that's the idea that's being conveyed. It's the people. We have people because the people are the ones who are embracing entomophagy, not the nutritional needs or the ecological pressures right here or the traditional livestock rearing practices. It's the people. So that's wise choice C. All right, then we have here, insects can be reared as mini livestock in small urban spaces and in fact thrives in high-density vertical environments. Well, we're talking about insects. Insects is plural, so we need to find a plural verb for thrives. Thrives, despite having an S on the end, is actually singular, right? When you have a verb that ends in an S, it's singular. When you have the verb that doesn't end in the S, it just ends with like the E or something, then it's plural, right? It might be a bit confusing, but it's just the opposite of how we think about nouns, right? Nouns, the S means plural. Without the S, it's usually singular. And with the verbs, if it has an S, it's singular. And if it doesn't have the S, it's plural. Opposite. So we have insects, and we need the plural version of thrives. Thrives is singular. Thrive without an S is plural. So we go with thrive. Insects can be reared as mini livestock in small urban spaces and in fact thrive in high density vertical environments. That sounds like it fits, and that's our answer. Let's move on. All right. Those crickets yield about a pound of, okay, actually let's read this sentence first. 30 crickets can produce roughly 3,000 offspring in a 6 by 6 by 2 inch plastic storage container. Those crickets yield about a pound of food. How much food they yield depends on the species. And we're asked for which choice most effectively combines the underlined sentences. Choice A, those crickets, depending on the species, yield about a pound of food. That seems amazing, right? It's the shortest answer, first of all, so it's the most concise. It still gets the idea of the food they yield depends on the species, and they yield about a pound of food on average. That's our answer because that's the most concise one that still gets the point across. Always look for the shortest answer that works. The rest of them, you see, also get this point across, but they're a lot longer. They have some extraneous information. They have some repetition that we're trying to get rid of. So that's why that's not our answer, and our answer is choice A. Let's keep going. All right. Rearing mini livestock in urban areas could significantly reduce the deforestation caused by the raising of traditional livestock. And then we have question 6. Insects have external skeletons or exoskeletons that support and protect their bodies. And we're asked for which choice most effectively establishes the main topic of the paragraph. Let's think about this question. So we're going to read the entire paragraph first to see what the paragraph is saying, what its main topic is. All right, because their exoskeletons seal in water, insects don't sweat and consequently don't need much water. 2,000 crickets, for example, require only 1 liter of water every 5 weeks, whereas traditional livestock consume 70% of the world's available fresh water. That seems like a damning statistic right there. All right, let's continue on though. Insects also require far less feed than do animals. They require a $15. Okay, so that's underlined as 7, so probably going to be something changed there, so it just doesn't feel right now. But it says a $15 mixture of cat food, cereal, and powdered milk can feed thousands of bugs for 2 months. $15, thousands of bugs for 2 months. That seems like an insane amount, right? It barely costs anything initially being able to feed all of this. We see that they barely even require any water. Seems like they're not requiring that many resources compared to the livestock. Thus, as insects even consume organic waste. You don't even need to buy them things. You can just take stuff that's already been waste that's going to get thrown in landfills or something, further reducing the expense and ecological resources needed to raise them. Consequently, feeding one cow costs a farmer about $70 to $80 every 2 months. So we see this huge divide between how much insects cost to raise and how much the livestock cost to raise. How much the livestock cost to raise. So I think what we're going to see is the main topic here is that insects require less resources than do other animals. And, well, choice A doesn't really support that. No change doesn't support that. And then we have choice B. Not only can insects thrive in small spaces, but as cold-blooded invertebrates with external skeletons, bugs also use far fewer resources than do other animals. See, that says exactly, they use far fewer resources. Let's go with that one. Let's look at the other choices. When deciding which kind of livestock, one must consider the cost of the feed for the livestock. That doesn't talk about the bugs and how economically superior the bugs are in terms of how much it costs to feed them, how much it costs to raise them. And then 70% of the earth is covered in water, less than 1% is accessible for consumption. No, that is nothing to do with what we're talking about. Move on. Insects also require far less feed than do animals. Semicolon, they require a $15 mixture of cat food, cereal, and powdered milk can feed thousands of bugs for 2 months. Well, let's see. A $15 mixture of cat food, cereal, and powdered milk can feed thousands of bugs for 2 months. That's an independent clause. That's going to be on its own, right? We want to say insects also require far less feed than do animals. And then we can give this example. We can just stop at animals with the semicolon right here, splitting the independent clauses, and then say this. There's animals, semicolon, bam, and then we say that example. That's answer choice D. We see that for answer choice A, we have they require, which is not an independent clause. That doesn't work. The they require is the same as this answer choice, since the period and the semicolon are the same thing. You can exchange them out. And then animals, comma, requiring, and then colon is like really weird. It says requiring a $15 mixture of cat food, cereal, and powdered milk can feed thousands of bugs for 2 months. That is completely off grammar. That does not work. And we can move on. All right, insects can even consume organic waste, further reducing the expense and ecological resources needed to raise them. So insects don't cost that much. Then we have feeding one cow costs a farmer about $70 to $80 every 2 months. So that's on the other hand side, right? So feeding one cow costs a lot more. So there's insects cost little, cows cost a lot, livestock cost a lot. There's a contrast. So we go with our in contrast. That's our contrast word. We have consequently, and which is a cause and effect. That's not what we're going for. We have furthermore and similarly, which are both similarity words, and then we have in contrast, which is our conflict word. That we're trying to get a conflict word to set up that contrast. So that's our answer. All right, question number 9. The writer wants to include accurate and relevant information from the graph to support the main claim of the paragraph. So we have a graph down here that gives us grams of protein per 100 grams of meat in locusts and grasshoppers, chapulines, palmer, beetles, crickets, termites, beef, chicken, cat, shrimp. All right. So let's see. The environmental benefits of entomophagy come at no expense to humans' health. So basically, we're going to try to get things that have the same amount of protein or a bit more amount of protein. So let's see. Well, we have choice A says that the insects produce less protein than chicken. That's not what we want. This choice B says they all offer amounts of protein close to or greater than traditional sources. That's exactly what we want. We want to say that they're greater, or the same or greater, no expense to humans' health. And then choice C says, choice C is just one specific example. It's not very important or relevant. And then choice D doesn't talk about the insects at all, which is not what we're going for either. So that's why it's choice B for our answer. And then we have here vitamin B12, for instance, which is essential for neurological functions, blood production, metabolism, and DNA synthesis, is twice as plentiful in crickets as it is in beef. Well, let's see what we can do here. So we have vitamin B12. We can take this part out, and we get that we can get vitamin B12 is twice as plentiful in crickets as it is in beef, taking that part out. So that part right here is a non-essential element. Well, not the is part. The dash and the for instance is a non-essential element. We have a comma on one side, and since non-essential elements are going to be bounded by the same thing on both sides, we're also going to have a comma on the other side over here. So our answer is going to be B, synthesis, comma. And then here we have 11 out of 11, question 11. In light of these nutritional advantages, entomophagy is worth serious consideration as a solution to the originating livestock production crisis. So this is essentially saying that it's coming, the crisis is coming. So we see originating is not what it says. Impending, that seems to work out. Impending livestock production crisis. It's coming, long awaited. Well, we have nothing to suggest that it's long awaited, right? And that also doesn't give the idea that it's coming right now. And we have impatient. That's really applied to humans or animals, not a idea or a crisis. And our answer is choice B, impending. All right, so that was it for this writing argument passage. I hope you liked it or found it informative or interesting. And I'll see you next time when we continue our study with these writing passages. See you later.